I'm ready. I think I should have turned the air conditioning on.
You warm?
Are you warm?
It's a little warm. It's a little warm, but I'll be all right.
We'll be all right.
The meeting for Akron City Council will come to order. Clerk will read the roll.
Freeman, Fusco, Hoke, Kamer, Keith, Kilby, Milkovich, Neal, Amobian, Samples, Sims, Somerville, Swirsky.
Thank you. At this time, I'm just going to ask if we have a moment of silence for the victims of the senseless shooting at the synagogue in Pittsburgh. So on tonight, we just want to honor their lives and lift their families up in prayer. Thank you. At this time, for those who are in our audience, if you voluntarily wish to do so, would you please stand as we are led in prayer by Bishop Call, who is from the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. Immediately following our prayer, we will be led in the Pledge of Allegiance. I'm going to ask if Councilman Keith will do that for us.
Our Father in heaven, as we gather for this important, vital meeting to our democracy, we are so thankful to live in this country, for the freedoms we enjoy, for those that lead our nation, our state, and our wonderful city. We pray thy blessings upon all of us gathered here, that we may discuss things that are in accordance with thy will, and that we can come to decisions, that the city council can come to decisions that are in the best interest of the people of the city of Akron. Heavenly Father, at this time, we humbly pray for our neighbors down the road in Pittsburgh, that their hearts will be comforted and that healing will occur. We are indebted unto thee for our freedoms, and we desire to be one nation under God. And we say this in the name of Jesus Christ. Amen.
Amen.
States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Clerk will read the minutes from our previously held meeting.
Minutes from October 22nd, 2018. Council convened in regular session at 7 p.m. with President Somerville in the chair. All members were present except Freeman. Minutes of the previous regular meeting were approved. Reading of petitions and communications. Passage of the consent agenda. Report of standing and special committees. Passage and referral of new ordinances and resolution. Representation from various departments and divisions. Public speaking period. No further business on a motion by Fusco. Council adjourned at 7:52 p.m. to reconvene in regular session on October 29, 2018, or a special call.
Any corrections or additions? All in favor signify by saying aye. Any opposed? The ayes have it. Letters, petitions, and communications.
Income tax receipts through the end of September 2018.
File.
Executive financial report, third quarter 2018.
File.
Notice of a new D5 liquor permit to El Papas Incorporated, doing business as El Papas Mexican Restaurant, 400 Howe Avenue.
Special attention, Councilman Kilby.
Notice of a new C1, C2 liquor permit to AJ Station Incorporated at 1404 South Main Street.
Special attention, Councilman Kamer. Before you, you have the consent agenda. All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? The ayes have it.
Roll call and final passage. Freeman, Fusco, Hoke, Kamer, Keith, Kilby, Milkovich, Neal, Amobian, Sample, Sims, Somerville, Swirsky.
We'll now move into our old business, rules. Councilman Keith.
Thank you, Madam President. The committee would like time, please.
Time will be granted. Planning, Councilman Fusco.
Yes, thanks, President Somerville. The request of the committee is for time on 1 through including 5.
Time will be granted on items 1 through 5.
And the request of the committee on item number 6 is favorable with suspension of the rules.
Are there any objections? Seeing and hearing none, the rules have been suspended.
Yes, thank you. This is the development that's proposed for the South Hawkins, Alden Avenue and Ward 4 area. I know Mr. Neal had a meeting out with the constituents along with the developer, and there's plenty of discussion. There's a number of conditions that developers asked to meet, has agreed to do those to meet those conditions. I believe the planning commission recommended approval as well as the department, so we recommend approval this evening.
The rules have been suspended. The committee's report is favorable. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The ayes have it.
Roll call and final passage. Freeman, Fusco, Hoke, Kamer, Keith, Kilby, Milkovich, Neal, Amobian, Samples, Sims, Somerville, Swirsky.
Councilman Fusco?
Yes, thank you. The request of the committee is to file 7. This is the petition for what we had just voted on.
Item 7 will be filed.
Time on the balance.
Time will be granted. Public safety, Councilman Kamer.
Continue time, please.
Time will be granted.
That's it.
Yep. We'll now move into our new legislation, rules.
Okay, offered by Keith, item number 0, ordinance repealing Title 11, Chapter 110, Business Regulations, Section 110.31, polygraph tests of the Akron Codified Ordinance declaring emergency.
Councilman Keith.
Thank you, Madam President. The committee's report is favorable, and we are requesting suspension of the rules.
Any objections? Seeing and hearing none, the rules have been suspended.
Thank you. This is just cleaning up this particular ordinance, the language of it, no real changes, except that as our law department is moving forward, we are noting, and our human resources department, we are just noting some things aren't brought up to date, and that's what we are trying to do. So with that, we would just like the suspension of the rules.
Thank you. The rules have been suspended. The committee's report is favorable. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The ayes have it.
Roll call and final passage. Freeman, Fusco, Hoke, Kamer, Keith, Kilby, Milkovich, Neal, Amobian, Samples, Sims, Somerville, Swirsky. Okay. Item number 1, offered by Keith. Ordinance authorizes the mayor or his designee to accept a $25,000 grant in grant funds through the Better Future platform awarded by the Goodyear Tire and Rubber Company for promoting safe mobility, inspiring students to reach their full potential, and reducing environmental impact and declaring an emergency.
Councilman Keith.
Thank you, Madam President. The committee's report is favorable, and we are requesting suspension of the rules.
Any objections? Seeing and hearing none, the rules have been suspended.
This particular grant would help us with our Youth Leadership Council, which right now we have 120 members, and these are all students that we have that are aspiring to not only live in this community, but to be actively involved in community functions. So with that, and they meet monthly under the direction of Willis Smith, and we would like suspension of rules because of this.
The rules have been suspended. The committee's report is favorable. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The ayes have it.
Roll call and final passage. Freeman. Fusco. Hope. Kamer. Keith. Kilby. Milkovich. Neal. Amobian. Sample. Sims. Somerville. Swirsky. Item number 2 has been pulled. Moving on to number 3, offered by Keith, ordinance amending and/or supplementing Title III Administration Chapter on Lawful Discrimination of the Akron Codified Ordinances and declaring emergency.
Councilman Keith?
Thank you. The committee would like suspension of the rules on this because they have a favorable report.
Thank you. Any objections? Seeing and hearing none, the rules have been suspended.
Okay. As the Civil Rights Commission has been created and is moving forward, there were a number of things that needed to be cleaned up in our language that we have in this particular ordinance, and that is exactly what we are doing, and giving definitions so that it is easier to follow.
The rules have been suspended. The committee's report is favorable. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The ayes have it.
Roll call and final passage. Freeman. Fusco. Hope. Kamer. Keith. Kilby. Milkovich. Neal. Amobian. Sample. Sims. Somerville. Swirsky. Okay, item 3A, offered by Councilman Neal. Ordinance approving and authorizing the expenditure of $10,000 previously designated for My Neighborhood Our Akron for the purchase of a one-year subscription of the Balancing Act Pro Taxpayer Receipt and Meeting Mode software as approved by ordinance number 100-2018 and declaring emergency.
Councilman Freeman?
Madam President, we met this afternoon and discussed this. Question was called. We voted. However, it's been brought to my attention that there was not a motion made. The vote was 2 for and 3 against. So I think in order to do this properly, we need to put forth a motion based upon this afternoon's vote for an adverse report, and for that I need to poll the committee. Keith?
Yes, on an adverse report.
Milkovich? No. Hoke? Aye. Ms. Amobian? No. And Freeman, aye on the adverse report. So the report of the committee is adverse report, and I think upon that we would file the item. Thank you.
Councilman Neal?
Madam Chair, there were some questions raised during the committee on this adverse report. And I want to make sure that I understand the Budget Committee's report out, because
Mr. Neal, move your microphone up.
I want to make sure I understand the Budget Committee's report out, because as was stated earlier, we already approved to acquire this piece of software, this tool that would empower council to understand and track the budget and engage the citizens in the process. So we've approved to use this tool. What we were voting on today was how to fund it, which was $10,000, identified money that's left over from the My Neighborhood Our Akron grant. And so, because it'll come back for us again, so I just want to make sure I have understanding on what the committee's report, those who voted adverse, why did they vote adverse? Since we as council, on that day when we voted, the vote was 8-4, Swirsky was absent. Those who voted for it were Ms. Amobian, Mr. Freeman, Ms. Samples, Mr. Milkovich, Ms. Sims, Mr. Kilby, and myself, as well as Madam President. Those who voted against it, us using a software to help us track the budget and engage our citizens, were Mr. Fusco, Mr. Hope, Mr. Kamer, and Ms. Keith. So again, since we've passed this legislation to acquire this tool, just want clarification from the committee, because it will come back. We're going to use the money from the My Neighborhood Akron grant. We're going into the budget process where we're going to be evaluating the budget. So we'd like clarification from the committee, please.
Councilman Freeman, do you want to have a response to that?
The committee's report is an adverse report. We had a lot of discussion this afternoon.
Okay, thank you. At this time, if we can maintain order, I appreciate it. Thank you so much. Councilman Amobian?
Thank you, Madam President. I think Mr. Neal did ask the right question. We have already approved this ordinance, and we have come back with how to fund it. Now, the discussion this afternoon had to do with the administration's role in implementing the software. So what I did between the committee meetings and tonight, I went to the website, and I actually called Mr. Chris Adams, who is the man that's responsible for this tool. He found it to be kind of laughable, in the sense that we have 3 branches of government, as all cities and state roles have. We are one branch of government, so the administration doesn't tell us what to do. We work with the administration, and we oversee the budget, the passage of that, and we have the authority to do other things. One of the things I learned, and he said, this is a tool to use to engage the community, be transparent with the community, get the community to participate, and to show accountability. And what I thought was so interesting about this was that we say that we have an open checkbook, but yet we are saying that we do not have time to do the kinds of things that this tool will allow us to do with the citizens of Akron. That's incongruent. What we have already done, folks, we've already passed the legislation. We found money through money that we've set aside for the community to pay for this. All we're doing now is saying, bring the software package on. He is saying that they will come here, and there should be nothing about the budget, folks, that's confidential. Absolutely nothing. This is public funding. The public has a right to know everything. And if they put in a request to get information that is not apparent through the open checkbook, they have every right to get it if they put in a request for it. We have 30 days to utilize this software. If we choose not to use it, we don't have any obligation to pay for anything. So I don't understand what the problem is, and I hate to think that it's the messenger as opposed to the message that is being conveyed here, and that's what it appears to me, because if we have an open checkbook, and if it's fully open, it's the same thing that this tool will do. It would just allow you to engage the citizens. They sit around the table with tablets and notebook and use their own tax dollars and talk about, I pay this much in taxes, and then the tool would allow them to go through all the services that are provided by the city and show how their tax dollars are distributed, and then and show you how the budget is put together. It's basically a tool to use, and I don't understand why we are going against it, especially now that we have already approved it. I think somebody needs to try to explain that, because it doesn't make sense to me.
Mr. Hardy?
So happy to explain further the administration's position. So I want to be clear that this company that's offering the software is a for-profit company, so it's not surprising to me that they would be open arms to an institution who's looking to utilize their services. But once again, it's been insinuated that the city somehow withholds information about its finances from the public. That is false. The entire budget is searchable and available online right now as we talk here today. Open Checkbook is a process done and administered completely by the state, I believe it's the State Treasurer's Office, where anyone can go and see any check, any expenditure that the city of Akron has put on, has approved and spent. All of that is available. So it's interesting to me that we're talking about this when in not just reality, but in practice, all of this information is already public and already online and available to anyone who wants to use it. And the insinuation that somehow someone would ask the city for financial information that we would not make available, again, I would ask you to prove that we haven't done that. We continue to provide open and transparent information about the city's budget. It is online today for anyone who wants to look at it.
Thank you. Councilman Kilby?
Thank you, Madam President, and I'll address my comments to the chair. I've been following this pretty closely, and I agree with what my colleagues from the 4th Ward and at-large Councilwoman Amobian said, that we already passed this. And I know that a committee gave it an adverse report, you know, and I don't know what the definition of a report is. It's just like, this is a passing grade and this is not a passing grade? Or do you owe us an explanation in either writing or at least verbal to this entire committee? I mean, council meeting, entire council meeting. And I don't think it's appropriate for a deputy mayor or whatever Mr. Hardy is, chief of staff, to deliver that report. It's our job. Okay, and another thing, with all due respect, I believe the Robert's Rules of Order require you to call on members of council first until you give someone in the administration the floor. And you can check that out, but I think that's a rule. And
Councilman Kilby, I'm going to stop you right there. He motioned his hand before you did.
He's not a member of this council, Madam
So
President.
continue.
We are.
Continue.
You and everybody around this horseshoe is a member of this council. He's not. He's part of the administration. That doesn't make him the enemy. But I think we need to follow some basic democratic principles of a legislative body and at least our own rules, which is supposed to be Robert's Rules of Order. And that's all I got to say. But I wish, I don't want to put anybody on the spot, but I wish you would ask the chairman of the Budget and Finance report to issue a report, verbally or written, before we just put this to bed.
Thank you, Councilman Kilby. Councilman Neal?
Madam Chair, the report was an adverse report. Last week, we had an adverse report, or 2 weeks ago, we had an adverse report on the dog barking ordinance. We voted on it in this body to either approve that report or not to approve it. So we should vote on this. We should vote on this. This cannot be filed. It needs to be voted on. And again, so that those who haven't been able to follow this, on council, we approved so that we would have this tool, so that we could better understand the budget, so that we don't have to follow through emails. If you go through our budget process, when we come here and we sit, and everybody in the city comes before us, from the administration on down, for us to approve the budget. When we have questions, right now, we follow our questions on emails, and you have to try to find it on your phone. This tool will give us something where we could all follow. We could see how, when we make a decision, how it impacts the overall budget. And most importantly, it would act as a tool where our citizens can be engaged in the process. So, you know, again, this is for council. As my colleague, Woman at Large, Ms. Amobian spoke, I think we have to start to understand some basic civics. There's a difference between the administrative body and the legislative body. This is a tool for council and for us to be able to engage our citizens. We've had them come down here and speak from across the open comment period, asking for how to understand our budget. This tool does that. A tool on legislation that we already passed and agreed on. Now we've identified the funding source. So thank you.
Thank you. Councilman Samples?
Thank you, Madam President. I do support the online checkbook. I did vote for it previously. It was about 6 months ago when we first brought it in, or maybe a little longer. My concern is taking it from my neighborhood, or Akron. because it's for the community. To me, this is something that benefits us here on council, not the community. We have all other kind of funds that we could be using for this. I just have an issue with taking it from a fund that's for the community that's already been cut. I've already exhausted mine. I have people who still have paperwork pending, and I've exhausted my funds. So I have council people who've never even used their funds, but people in my ward are now going to be penalized because I have exhausted my funds that have already been cut. So for me, I support it. I want the money to come from somewhere else. I'm going to abstain because I have no funds over there. Other people do, I don't, and I just have a serious issue with us taking funds that is supposed to be for our community for something for us. So it's been approved. I just would like to know where the money's going to come from outside of something that's for the community and us getting an intern to run it. And that, to me, I think is what needs to happen. I think we need to just really think about what we're doing with my neighborhood or Akron after this. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilman Fusco?
Thank you, President Somerville. This legislation here, we had heard the first time this was voted on by council, that the administration, the finance director indicated that there was not time, there was not bodies enough to implement this. And now we're looking toward the council staff in terms of implementing something like this, in which I question if we have the expertise even to be able to work side by this one company that we continuously look at, the Balancing Act Pro. I wonder if there's others out there perhaps, but the Balancing Act Pro organization here, and we had heard time and again that we don't have the personnel to implement this at this time. And we have, as we all are much aware, that online, everything's available, everything.
Thank you. Are there any other council members who have not yet had an opportunity to speak, who wish to do so? Councilman Kilby?
Thank you, Madam President. I just want to say that, the name of this company is Balancing Act. That's what we're doing down here, balancing the budget. And the priorities we make are sometimes moral decisions that we make. Now, I don't know if this is going to work or not. All I know is we have an opportunity from a company that is going to give it to us for free for 30 days. And if we don't like it, we don't have to pay the $10,000. Now, we need to also, when we're talking about money, we need to put money in perspective. Okay, just like with the charter change the administration is proposing, issue 9 on the ballot, they say, well, it's going to save money. That's true. $82,000 over every 4 years when we have a municipal election. So if you put it in perspective, that's a little over $20,000 and some change every year. So my point is this is what I'm leading up to. In a budget of $500,000, what's $20,000 a year? It's the same with this thing we're talking about right now. Some people are objecting to taking it out of something else. We're arguing about peanuts. That's, every time we get into an argument on this council or a discussion about some people want to appropriate funds for something and some don't, it always gets down to, oh, we can't afford it. We can't afford $10,000? It's a joke. I mean, Mr. Neal, a while back, brought to our attention that we're spending $74,000 a year to paint 20% of our fire hydrants. So I just think, first off, I still would like to get a report from the committee of some sort why they're adverse to this. And again, I'll ask you to call on the chairman to give us it. And if it's just it's redundant or it's not necessary, that's a report.
but just to say, well, we said it's an adverse report. I know we discussed it at committee, but I think this is a council meeting that's open to the public, and it's a public forum. People that are listening need an explanation why we do things sometimes. And we need to do it right here on the floor of council with the cameras on us and the press here, because that's what keeps us honest, not cutting deals on a committee where nobody even knows why we did something.
Councilman Neal?
Madam Chair, I just emailed to everyone the supporting documentation that was a part of this legislation that was passed on March 16, 2018. Now, at that time, the question was, how are we going to fund it? If you remember, we had cut our My Neighborhood, Our Akron fund to $20,000 because most on this committee voted to put $10,000 in Akron Reed's program, which cut the budget. When it came before us, we added to the My Neighborhood, Our Akron program, and we increased it to $40,000, which doubled what we had. I checked with Ms. Karen Haig. To date, we have only used about $9,000 of that money, which means there's $30,000 left. The program for the My Neighborhood, Our Akron ends Wednesday. It's over Wednesday. Now, I call because there's always a program I do, and hopefully most of you will work with our leaf pickup. That's a chance for our groups to garner some more money. But to address this issue about this, so $30,000 that's waiting there, that's going to go back to the general fund. So that money is there. And if there's a question about that, I identified we have money in our travel budget, and if there's a question about that, we're coming up to our budget process, we can just legislate it right through our regular budget process. But this money is identified right now, the money's there. I don't think we're going to spend $30,000 by Wednesday because we haven't spent it since we initiated this year. So that money is there. And just for the members here who asked about, if you read this that was sent to you, Balancing Act is going to provide us with 10 hours of consulting support at no additional cost. They will also, if we didn't send them a purchase order, they would still provide basic consulting services that will be limited to populating the simulation with data provided by the city in the form of a computer-readable spreadsheet. The Balancing Act staff will also provide some assistance in creating customizations such as service level of tax fee questions as framed by the city staff or elected officials. The trial simulation can be published in preview mode, but will not accept user submissions. I sent you the supporting documentation that we all read, that we voted on to approve to bring this tool into council back in March. A tool that, one, would help us have a better understanding on how to balance the city's budget. I asked this question this afternoon. We know that we sold an asset that brought $500,000 a year into council. We sold that asset to pay off a debt, somewhere in the range of $8 to $9 million. We sold cell towers. I asked council, I asked administration, can anybody tell me how are we going to feel that $8 million to $9 million deficit? A tool like this will empower us with that kind of information. I asked, how are we going to cover that $500,000 that we used to get from the cell towers? A tool like this will empower us with that information. So again, to my colleagues, because we've already passed the legislation to get the tool. What came before you today was we identified a source to pay for it. And so that I can be better prepared if the adverse report stands today to bring it back. Secondly, so I can be prepared to address the constituents, our constituents, not all from my ward. Some of them we've heard come and speak from that open comment period about wanting to understand the city's budget. So, Madam President, call for a vote on the adverse report.
Actually, we have two other people who've asked to have a comment. Councilman Fusco, followed by Councilman Amobian.
Thank you. I understand that there's a question brought forward, reference the rules and how the committee is implementing them. I don't know if there's someone from law could explain the procedures. please. Yes, yeah, there was a question brought forward in terms of procedurally to make sure that this was done correctly, the adverse report. So there's a question.
This body to poll its committee members, and I believe Mr. Freeman polled the committee, and there was an adverse report. It is also common for the body to vote on that adverse report. So if you vote in favor of the adverse report, then you will be voting to support the committee's adverse report. Does that answer the question?
Yeah, I believe so. Yeah, thank you very much for that. Thank you. You know, the $9 million gap, or whatever as it's been referred to at times, I guess. The thing of it is in the 2017 budget, and it's been stated before, there was miscellaneous funds budgeted as an income source in that budget. And that was identified as the potential sale of those leases to a suitor. Now, what had happened was 2 years before this, we were approached. The city of Akron was approached in reference to these leases, so they knew that that income source would be there. So in essence, it was budgeted. It's not a gap. I don't think that's appropriate verbiage for this. The finance department, they had a plan. It was budgeted for the cell tower leases. And with that, as I mentioned before, that this particular item here, it sounds like the way we're proceeding in terms of Robert's Rules of Order, we're doing that correctly, and I would ask for a vote. But I understand, and I would certainly yield if there's anyone else with questions.
Thank you. Councilwoman Omobian, followed by Councilwoman Sims.
Point of order, please. Point of order. Isn't it appropriate for you to call on the council members that have not spoke on this issue yet? Isn't that the proper procedure? I believe.
Councilman Kilby.
Isn't that the rule?
Please have a seat.
You're not following it.
Please have a seat. Thank you. Councilwoman Omobian, thank you.
Yes, thank you, President Somerville. There was a comment referenced earlier about a for-profit company. This is an NLC endorsed program, like many of the other endorsed programs that we have promoted or utilized for our citizens of this community. So there's nothing unusual about that. But let me just say this. I'm not really clear on what we're doing. We've already approved the program itself. Tonight we are approving the funds to fund the program that we had previously approved. So I'm not really sure what this vote does. So I need to be clear on that. Let me just give you some other things to think about, some other materials that I came across. There are a huge number of cities, San Antonio, Milwaukee, Charlotte, Knoxville, Tennessee, Virginia Beach, Virginia, Charlottesville, Virginia, and the list goes on and on and on, how these people have purchased this program and are utilizing it to be transparent, to engage the public, to get them to participate in understanding the budget. And regardless of how my comments are being interpreted, because I'm still not questioning anybody's integrity or anything, basically I'm saying that this is a tool that council has approved, and the sponsor of the ordinance has gone back to come up with some resources that belong to council that we can utilize to purchase this. And remember, we have a 30-day trial period. If for any reason it's not what people thought it was, we can just discontinue the contract. And so it would be helpful to understand if this is an adverse, are we going back and voting against or undoing the legislation that we previously approved as well? Thank you.
Councilman Sims.
Thank you, Madam President. I asked this question during committee. The same question. So what are we voting on? Are we voting on just to fund it? Because, like I said earlier, we've already passed this. So is the adverse report, maybe they can just answer that question, is that on the funding request? Because we talked a lot about what we didn't like and who was going to do what, so on and so forth, but that should have happened really at the time we were passing the legislation. So my question is only that, what is the adverse report? Is it for the funding or clarity? Thank you.
Thank you, Councilwoman Sims. So the committee's report is adverse. The report is relating to item 3A, which is the funding piece of that. So at this time, the committee's report is adverse. All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? Roll call.
Okay, this is voting on the adverse report. Freeman. Fusco. Hoke. Kamer. Keith. Kilby. Milkovich. Neal. Amobian. Sample. Sims. Somerville.
Aye.
Swirsky.
Aye.
The measure passes 7-5 with one abstention.
It's actually 7-4 and one abstention. Oh, Sims, yep. 7-5 and one abstention, yep. All right. We will now move on to planning.
Okay, item number 4, offered by Fusco and also Swirsky. It's a resolution approving and confirming the appointment by Mayor Horrigan of Scott Rowland, Lauren Alexander, Greg Burke, Ellis W. Polk, Renee M. Need to the vacant commercial or industrial building appeals board and declaring an emergency.
Councilman Fusco?
The report of the committee is favorable, and we ask for suspension of the rules.
Any objections? Seeing and hearing none, the rules have been suspended.
Yes, thanks. This is a follow-up legislation reference the vacant building registration program this council voted on and passed some time ago. This puts in place a board to hear people that may want to challenge the city in terms of declaring vacant building. So with that, we recommend approval this evening.
Thank you.
Started.
The rules have been suspended. The committee's report is favorable. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The ayes have it.
Roll call and final passage. Freeman, Fusco, Hoke, Kamer, Keith, Kilby, Milkovich, Neal, Amobian, Samples, Sims, Somerville, Swirsky. Item number 5, offered by Fusco. Ordinance authorizing the sale of certain vacant city-owned properties pursuant to the city's A Lot for a Little program, determining said property is not needed for public use and declaring an emergency.
Councilman Fusco?
Consent agenda.
This item will be placed on the consent agenda.
Item number 6, offered by Fusco. Ordinance authorizing the sale of 860 Aberdeen Street, determining said property is not needed for public use and declaring an emergency.
Councilman Fusco?
Consent agenda.
This item will be placed on the consent agenda.
Item 6A, offered by Fusco. Ordinance approving the expenditure of additional funds for mowing of publicly owned and privately owned lots and declaring an emergency.
Councilman Fusco?
For the committee is favorable when we ask for suspension of the rules.
Any objections? Seeing and hearing none, the rules have been suspended.
Yes, thank you. Last week, this council voted in favor of this expenditure for private and publicly owned lands for mowing. And what had happened was they had omitted, if you look under section 1, whereas the last part of that sentence says beyond the amounts authorized in ordinance number 413, 2017, and ordinance 54-2018. The 413, 2017 was omitted, and so this is just correcting that error. But we had voted on this last week.
Thank you. The rules have been suspended. The committee's report is favorable. All in favor signify by saying aye. Any opposed? The ayes have it.
Roll call and final passage. Freeman, Fusco, Hoke, Kamer, Key, Kilby, Milkovich, Neal, Amovian, Sample, Sims, Somerville, Swirsky. Okay, item number 8, offered by Kamer, ordinance authorizing the purchasing agent after advertising for bids to enter into a contract or contracts for its remodeling of the patrol office room 511 and declaring an emergency.
You.
Yeah, Madam Chair, he skipped actually public service, but I'll go.
Yeah. You did, okay.
Want me to report out?
You might as well. Go ahead, Councilman Cameron.
Committee's report is favorable, and we're asking for suspension of the rules, please.
Any objections? Seeing and hearing none, the rules have been suspended.
Thank you. This is for, to upgrade, to make the patrol operations office safer, both for staff and citizens, and we're asking for passage. Thanks.
Thank you. The rules have been suspended. The committee's report is favorable. All in favor signify by saying aye. Any opposed? The ayes have it.
Roll call and final passage. Freeman, Fusco, Hope, Kamer, Key, Kilby, Milkovich, Neal, Amovian, Sample, Sims, Somerville, Swirsky. I'm sorry, I skipped one. The paper clips caught two together. Item number 7, offered by Key. Ordinance authorizing Director of Public Service or his designee without the formality of publicly advertising for bids to enter into a contract or contracts with S.A. Communal Company for the emergency repair and replacement of the fire sprinkler system in Morley parking deck and declaring an emergency.
Councilman Keith?
Thank you, Madam President. The committee's report is favorable. We are requesting suspension of the rules.
Any objections? Seeing and hearing none, the rules have been suspended.
Thank you. This is for repair of the unit that we have over there, which maintains a considerable amount of parking that we offer in that particular facility, and so it is a necessity.
Thank you. The rules have been suspended. The committee's report is favorable. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The ayes have it.
Roll call and final passage. Freeman, Fusco, Hope, Kamer, Keith, Kilby, Milkovich, Neal, Amovian, Samples, Sims, Somerville, Swirsky.
Before we move into our public comment period, we do have a special presentation on tonight. I'm going to call on Councilman Samples.
Thank you, Madam President. With only 2 days left in the month of October, which we all know is Breast Cancer Awareness Month, I would like to take the time to highlight a nonprofit here in the city of Akron doing some phenomenal work as relates to breast cancer, and that's Not Just October. So, surprise. LeVar didn't know anything about this, so myself and Council President Margot Somerville would like to present Mr. LeVar Jacobs with the proclamation from the city. And it reads, whereas Not Just October is a nonprofit 501c3 organization that was created to expand the knowledge and resources available to breast cancer patients, survivors, and their supporters. And LeVar Jacobs founded the organization in memory of his mother, Kim, who passed away in 2009 from breast cancer. His vision is to change the way that our communities think and talk about breast cancer and continue to stress the importance of regular health screenings. And the organization continues to grow and gain more support across the nation, spreading the word that breast cancer is an issue worthy of attention all year round, not just October. Now therefore be it proclaimed, the city of Akron hereby thanks Not Just October for their dedication to education, community engagement to improve the awareness around breast cancer and its effect on families around the world. And I just want to say to LeVar that you are something else. I've known VAR for at least 10 years and watched him grow and watch him start this organization in the name of his mother and just doing some phenomenal things, not just here in the city of Akron, but across the state. He goes all the way to Vegas for events for breast cancer, and I know you are going to go do some big things. Just don't forget about Akron when you're doing them. So I want to present you with this proclamation.
Well, I just want to say thank you to all of our elected officials and everyone here for even taking time out to honor me for the things that I do with Not Just October. I spend pretty much every single day of my life either driving the bus or doing something with Not Just October, or both. And I want to thank my friends and family who came out to see this today. It was a surprise. I guess when all you walked in, I had on a blindfold. My lovely wife, my publicist, they all contacted me and told me I had to be somewhere. They didn't say where. They just told me to have free time. And I couldn't be any more happier because I'm just a kid from Akron, not LeBron, I'm LeVar. But I love the city. I love my mom. I'm so happy about what I'm able to do in her name. And as long as God keeps blessing me with the ability to make more connections and do more things in this city and cities across the United States, I'm really going to make a huge difference and make all of you even more proud than you already are. Thank you.
Mr. Jacobs, again, we want to thank you just for your passion and your dedication to this, and we just want to thank you for all that you do. At this time, we're going to move into our public comment period. If you wish to speak to council during this time, you may approach the podium. We're just going to ask that you please sign in, state your full name, spell your last name, and give us your address. You will have 3 minutes to speak to this body. Speakers are reminded that this is an official meeting. Remarks should be kept respectful and germane to council business. Speakers who should refrain from making any personal attacks. Anyone who breaches decorum will be ruled out of order and may be removed from council chambers.
Good evening, council. My name is Harrington Hargrove. I live at 1008 Laurel Avenue, 44307, Ward 3. I'm here today in reference to economic development and the black community. A lot of you know me by now. My request is, I've been writing the city for 25 years in economic development in Ward 3, and in 25 years, Ward 3 has been denied. And I'm talking about Ward 3 in the realm of Rhodes Avenue, Vertimodal Boulevard, Manchester Road, Thornton Street. And I've asked this body to take the trolley and ride through our community. I don't know if you have done it or not, but I have asked you to do this. And Ward 3 has been denied. We're in a hub zone and empowerment zone. I cannot express that enough. And to this day, this body will not come to with each other to formulate any program that's going to uplift our community. And under Section 3 of HUD, I have some letters here, and I want to just pass it to council after I speak, and I have it highlighted and underlined. And I've asked my councilwoman, I asked Mr. Somerville, I've talked to Mr. Vernon Sykes, and it seems like everyone can get something in Ward 3 but us in that corridor. So I'm asking the city to please look at what I'm talking about. Not only that, I got letters from Marcia Fudge's office, and it states that under Section 3 that the city has an obligation an obligation to set forth something that's going to uplift our community, but it hasn't taken place yet. And if you have took the trolley in Ward 3, will somebody let me know, have you rode through Ward 3? Can you tell
Mr.
me?
Hargrove, just direct your comments to me. They won't respond to you, okay, at this time.
Okay, well, I'm asking you to ride through Ward 3 and see what hasn't been done that will uplift our community. And like I say, I have some letters here, and I was told that if they received this in 2014 from me, the Department of Planning, and they said if they would consider any other area that they would look at Ward 3, but we have the 10th Street program that came before Ward 3 that I've been asking for 30 years.
Sir, your time is up, I'm sorry.
Well, can I give the
Finish your
letters?
thought, sure.
Can I get, okay, well, I would like to give these letters and look at the underlining. I have 3 copies, so you can pass them around.
Thank you, Mr. Hargrove.
Good evening. My name is Sage Lewis, and I represent 15 Broad Street in Akron. On Monday, September 17th, you voted no on our homeless village, and that was 43 days ago. To date, we have housed 11 people out of the 43 people you promised to house. There are another 5 people that are what is called self-resolved. One of those people moved in with a friend, 1 disappeared, 2 are in an abandoned house, and 1 is in rehab. There are 24 days left until Thanksgiving, and there are 27 people left to house. My hope is that you are willing to understand that housing the homeless is a slow and difficult process. Fingerprinting takes 30 days, getting an ID now takes 3 weeks, getting a social security card takes 10 days, there are orientations, there's intake processes, there are countless meetings and phone calls required for people that don't have phones and can't afford a bus ticket. And that's just the logistics of housing a homeless person. The psychological conditions of treating homelessness is a long and complicated process. Terry Heckman reported in a recent article that she expects 10 to 12 people are going to be very difficult to house. And she put out a plea in the newspaper, The Beacon, for my supporters to come forward to help house these people. That's a big admission. The truth of housing the homeless is that it is more than just available housing inventory. Homelessness is a condition. It is not just a simple lack of a socially approved dwelling. In 1935, Dr. Bob and his wife Ann began allowing alcoholics to live in their house on Ardmore Avenue here in Akron. The first realization they made was to remain sober, an alcoholic needed another alcoholic to work with. Our program has a similar belief. The homeless helping the homeless is the core of our program. I believe we are creating the beginnings of a new kind of program to help the condition of homelessness. That's why we are pushing to ask the courts to allow us to continue our work. I believe history will show that Akron is not only the home of Alcoholics Anonymous, but also the home to a new kind of treatment for the condition of homelessness. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Lewis.
My name is Steve Nome, N-O-M-E. I live at 1928 6th Street in Cuyahoga Falls. I'm here again to talk about retiree spouses' insurance benefits. Margaret Thatcher, who served as Prime Minister of Great Britain, once said, "You may have to fight a battle more than once to win it." I first appeared before Council in the fall of 2016, and I felt that the battle for providing retiree spouses with quality medical benefits at an affordable cost had been won when Wendy Weaver told me the next day that the requirement for spouses to obtain OPERS insurance for primary coverage was being suspended for 2017. In the fall of 2017, I came back to council when the city decided to require spouses to have OPERS insurance, which the cost had risen roughly $200 a month from $900 and something to $1,159 a month for 2018. Unfortunately, the city has refused a waiver on this requirement which makes the insurance coverage for spouses unaffordable. Because I've yet to receive any answers from the city which justify this requirement, I have been fighting this battle weekly for over a year. I'm still waiting to get official notification from the city about their plans for 2019, but I was told that the city just put their plans online last Friday. Because retirees need time to work out their financial plans, the city chooses to delay providing needed information. And they also state that each retiree has to get a letter from OPERS indicating that they have health care, and they must have a state retirement logo on it. Now, they made the same requirement for 2018, but OPERS, and they contacted OPERS because OPERS got so many requests about this letter that it overwhelmed them. And I said, the city should maybe go straight to OPERS and find out again whether we have insurance, or when you get your license, your auto license, you have to sign a paper saying you have auto insurance. Make us sign a paper that says we have OPERS. We all have OPERS, so we're not hiding it. We're not trying to cheat the city. It just seems like another way the city of Akron bureaucrats have come up with to inconvenience employees. And the city needs to quit looking at retirees as a burden, but as dedicated, hardworking employees who kept the city running smoothly and efficiently for over 30 years. We're not looking to be a financial burden on the city, but neither are we looking to be bankrupted before we're 65 by the city's poorly designed plan to save money. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Noel. Is there anyone else wishing to speak during our public comment period?
Hello. My name's Lydia Freed, F-R-E-E-D. I live at...
Before you start, can you pull the microphone down to your mouth a little bit? Thank you.
I live at 1269 Grant Street in Ward 7. I'm here regarding the empty Lawson's building at 1279 Grant Street. This building has been empty for 28 years. I have complained about this countless times, as Councilman Donnie Kamer and Tina Merlitty and Mary Ellen McAvoy can all attest to this. This building, the roof is collapsed. I have photographs if anyone cares to see. This property is a focal point of Grant Street. The whole street is being judged by the condition of this building. The property values on our block on Grant Street is directly affected by this, I feel. This property is the root of every problem that we've ever had in our neighborhood. Every time we have an issue with a bad neighbor or a slumlord, they always point to the Lawson's building and they say, the city doesn't care about this street, why should I? The parking, this is no longer an eyesore issue. The parking lot is currently being claimed by a motorcycle club that has taken root on Grant Street. The lot is a magnet for illegal activity, drinking, and litter. Anything that goes on bad on Grant Street happens in that parking lot. Over the years, we have exhausted all avenues. The property owner has been fined numerous times. I've been told in the past that as long as the property owner continues to pay the fines, our hands are tied. Paying the fines doesn't solve the problem. I feel the city has been too lenient with this property owner, and if our mayor feels or wonders why people move out of Akron, this is one perfect example.
I'm asking, please, after 28 years, somebody do something. This building needs to be leveled and the property secured. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Freed.
Make this real short, if possible. My name is Jeremiah Caldwell. I stay at 286 Carter Street. My situation is about my house the foundation gave in January of this year. And I've been coming here for about 5 months. And I've been getting the runaround. I would like to talk to two peoples that's here present. I received this letter with no return address, period, about my house. Right now, last Tuesday, Kenmore Construction been pounding back there. My house is shaking. The back of my foundation is gonna give. It's gonna give next week or a couple of months. But either way it go, my foundation is still open. Wintertime is coming in. They told me September. September? Been getting around me. I called him last week. Told me to see you too. I'll be here to see you after the meeting to address this letter that I received by one of you to get an understanding on it. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Caldwell. Is there anyone else wishing to speak during our public comment period? Seeing and hearing none, we'll close our public comment period and go into our committee assignments. Rules, Councilman Keith.
2:30.
Budget and Finance, Councilman Freeman. Planning, Councilman Fusco. Public Service, Councilwoman Keith. Public Utilities, Councilman Samples. Councilman Samples. Public Safety, Councilman Kamer. Parks and Rec, Councilman Neal. Housing, Councilman Kilby. Health and Social Services, Councilwoman Amobian. Economic Development, Councilman Sims. Green Committee, Councilman Swirsky.
1 o'clock.
Is there anything else coming before this body? Okay, a lot of questions. Councilman Samples?
Ouch. Thank you, Madam President. I wasn't really sure where to start, and I actually had to write it down so I wouldn't forget anything. I first want to start with a post from an 18-year-old named Samuel Caruso, and it really, really concerns me that someone 18 sees America in a way that adults don't see it. They've shot up churches, mosques, synagogues, our places of worship. They have shot elementary, high school, and college campuses, our places of learning. There have been 293 mass shootings in 2018 in the United States. The solution? More police. By the way, 47 police officers have been shot and killed this year due to firearms as well. By the way, none of these mass shootings were committed by black men or illegal immigrants or women. If you're worried about our biggest threat, don't look outside the country, look in. If what we've seen in the last couple of days is going to stop, it has to start and stop at the top. You cannot be the President of the United States holding yourself out to be a nationalist at rallies and sending out dog whistle comments and not expecting there not to be those who respond to those undertones that sound all too familiar to many of us. No one wants armed security guards in their places of worship, but this is what has become of our country. And again, as I said back in February of 2018, when I brought in a resolution urging the ban of assault weapons and bump stocks, and it passed 12-2, since February, like Sammy said, we've had 293 mass shootings. 239 people were killed by assault weapons, over 1,000 injured. 9 of those killed were from Ohio, 41 were injured. We now live in a country where extremists go into churches and kill people worshiping, where kids are killed at school, and after the body is removed, the kids go back to class. That's what happened today in North Carolina. A student shot his classmate, and they removed the body and sent the kids back to class. And the teacher said it was the safest course of action for the kids. This has become our America. We live in a time where a white man is more woke about the racial exclusion in the city of Akron than somebody who looks like me. We live in a time where a black man says a hat makes him feel like Superman. This is what has become of our country. Truth sometimes hurts. Truth sometimes makes us mad, makes us want to react, but in the end, it still is our truth. So we either do something about it or we continue to complain and watch the scourge of violence continue here in our country. This is America. But the beautiful thing about America, we still have a democracy for now. And I urge each and every one of you, if you haven't, Election Day is Tuesday, and it's time for us to change the course of our country. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilwoman Sims?
Thank you, Madam President. I'm so glad this council chambers is still a place where we bless. I'm also equally appreciative, and it's always also a place where folks in our community can come and find redress. So I just wanted to say to Mr. Hargrove, we did hear you. We set in motion actually immediately to host a meeting. We hope to have that done by this week. I thought it would be done last week, so my apologies for any delay. So we don't want you to think when you come here to council that we don't hear you. Today, I had an opportunity to take part in a portion of Elevate Akron, our new regional redevelopment, economic development plan for the city of Akron, a partnership between the city of Akron, the county, and our Chamber of Commerce. For those, I know many of us wouldn't have the opportunity to attend as we prepare for council committees on most Mondays, but I also had an opportunity to get a sneak preview for a presentation made with some of my colleagues around the table. To say that I am floored by some of the findings relative to the economic exclusion of certain persons in the city of Akron, but particularly the African American community. We have lots of work to do. I know that we all, again, aren't always available on Mondays because those are most difficult days to attend special sessions or luncheons where we can learn more about the work that is being done to try to mediate some of the challenges that we have economically. So I've taken the liberty to invite Steve Millard here to council for our economic development committee, on hopefully next week, but if not, I know that we're off on the 12th, and if not, we'll have him come in on the 19th. But in between time, I would encourage us to be about the business of really learning more about how we might do better, particularly around those communities of folks in our city who have been disenfranchised for a mighty long time. So again, I just wanted to prepare the committee and the council that we will have our own special report. I'm sure that folks have lots of questions they would like to see, hear answered. I have to say this, though. I'm really encouraged by what I've heard relative to the 5 major plans to try and redress and remediate some of the challenges we have in the area of economic development. But I'm most appreciative of the new leadership, Stephen Millard there at the Chambers, who is not too shy about speaking truth to power. He didn't allow what he saw to turn into maybe you didn't see that. And he has moved immediately to try to address some of the disparities even in his own office. So again, I just wanted to prepare us for the presentation from the Chambers. I also talked to Jason Dobson, who is from the county, who was a part of that group, as well as our own James Hardy, who did a tremendous job today just fielding some really difficult questions relative to our real challenges. So thank you.
Thank you, Councilman Sims. Councilman Kilby?
I just want to say thank the people that came down to speak. I think that's a very important part of the democracy, to listen to the people. I'm glad we implemented that change, and most of them left already, but there were some really good points made, and I think we need to listen to people. And then as far as us, I think it's important that we follow our own rules, and I didn't mean to like get anybody to dislike me, but I think we need to follow our rules. And maybe it might be time, maybe this winter sometime, to bring Dr. Rich in again and give us another lesson in parliamentary procedure. Did I say that right? Parliamentary? It's a long one, and a lot of syllables. And maybe Robert's Rules of Order. That's just a suggestion that I'm going to make. Thank you.
Councilman Neal?
Thank you, Madam Chair. You know, this year is going to wrap up pretty quickly. And throughout the year, we've had folks come down and express concerns. And things they want us to address as council. And we get caught up a lot of times in the daily activity. I'm going to ask that we start to plan now for a retreat for this council, not to have folks come in, but we need to have an agenda, a strategic plan on how to address some of the issues that have been brought to us for years. It should be no surprise to anybody on what was brought up, what was in the paper today. We've been expressing those concerns from across this chamber. But I think, you know, there's some difficult things that need to be addressed, and I think, you know, we can't lead where we're not willing to go. So there's a responsibility on council. There's a responsibility on council working with the administration. If things that my colleague mentioned, and they come and are shared with us across that podium every day, we need to have a way of tracking the concerns that come and making sure that we address them. Because as what was stated in the paper today, it's not just Ward 3, it's all across the city where people are locked out of opportunity. This body has a responsibility to understand how, when we legislate, how it impacts. And so, you know, I asked a question earlier in regards to the budget, because everything that we do goes back to the budget. I'll be bringing in another piece of legislation. If there's a concern, we've been talking about this for a year and a half, haven't heard from anybody. For a year and a half, we've been talking about this, on how to fund this. Because when it boils down to, when we talk about creating opportunity, I mean, just a simple thing. Earlier in the year, I asked everybody to look at our park and recreation brochure. When we talked about, does it really provide equitable distribution on, you know, the park and rec activities? Wards 3, Wards 4, and Wards 5 get one activity. One activity. Every other ward gets somewhere between at least 7 to 8 or 9 from events. This is just one small area that impacts the quality of life that was addressed in today's article. So I know sometimes these things aren't comfortable to talk about, but the reality of it is they impact the potential growth opportunities for our city. And if we're not willing to have these conversations, then we really do have to think about why are we here. So, Madam Chair, I'm asking that, you know, this year's going to be over before we know it. We need to plan sometime when we have time to produce a strategic plan that we can follow and that we can communicate to our constituents. And that strategic plan needs to have in it some of the concerns that have been brought to us throughout the year.
Thank you, Councilman Neal. Councilman Swirsky?
Yeah, I think I want to start by thanking my colleagues who went a little bit out of their way to express some sympathy and support for those who were killed in Pittsburgh this past weekend. And there is opportunity for others to do so. This Thursday night, the Jewish Community Center is holding a vigil, an interfaith community vigil at 5:30. I think I also want to call to attention that one of the first groups that rushed to the side of Temple Israel was a Muslim group to show support in a real concrete way. That's a group that really hasn't been here yet to say a prayer. But though they haven't prayed here, they did with their feet and with their actions by rushing to the support of Temple Israel. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilman Swirsky. Any objections? Seeing and hearing none, we are adjourned.
This concludes the live broadcast of Akron City Council. Margot Somerville, President of Council, presiding.